The people that we're filling with maintenance roles and the controls specialist roles, it's their opinions and it's their ideas that we're using to move us into that next century or the next stage of Behlen. And that's an exciting thing, especially for a young kid. I can really make an impact and I can leave my mark at Behlen, and this is how I can do it. And when they come in here and they see what we got going on and they see some of the, see the impact that some of these controls guys that he's been talking about, we make it pretty easy for a guy to be a superhero.
Yeah. How do we make manufacturers look like superheroes? How do you empower your team so that they're bringing their best insights and ideas to work every day? Well, we're going to be sitting down with Mick and Cody from Behlen to explore those topics right here in this interview. We're here at Behlen, and I feel there's only one appropriate way to start this conversation, and your coworker Jeremy inspired this question. So I'm gonna I see you getting a little nervous about that. No, I promise it's a good question. So Mick, we'll start with you, and then Cody will go to you on this. Why is metal still an art? Metal forming, metal manufacturing.
Well, that's a good question. That's something that Jeremy's a firm believer that we still view metal as an art, and a lot of what we do here is it's very unique for the markets that we serve, and that's we've created our own niche, I guess, in those markets, and a lot of that, in my opinion, is because of the unique structures that we build. We design buildings to customer specifications. There's a lot of engineering work that goes into that. Same thing with our ag. We were the first to the market with big grain bins, which took a lot of engineering, and engineering is an art. So I would assume that's where Jeremy's coming from.
Yeah. Cody, what do you think?
Well, I'll go with a little more practical approach, I guess.
Okay.
Most people view a piece of steel as a piece of steel, right? But actually, there's a lot more to that piece of steel. And not every, but most pieces of steel form differently, curve differently. We do, like to Mick, what Mick was saying, we do some unique processes, right? Most people try to just do 90-degree bends and make everything simple, right? Well, we make grain bends, which are circles. We make curvettes, which are half circles, right? So we're curving steel, and not every piece acts the same. So it is kind of an art, and our partners in progress out here, do a great job of making sure the product is where we want it as it goes out the door, but that means they have to do it a little bit different every time, possibly, and that's where kind of that art form comes in.
Yeah. And I can tell the folks here take a lot of pride in that art, just haven't been out there on the factory floor. It's impressive. It's an impressive operation you have here. One thing we're doing in this series, I wanted to get to know Behlen a little bit with that question, kind of your thoughts on the bigger picture. But what we want to talk about is like community and culture, how you're connected to, central Nebraska. So maybe the right way to start this is with your own stories here and kind of the story of Behlen a little bit. So Mick, I'll ask you first, what attracted you to Behlen? You've been around the industry around here. There are it's a competitive market here in central Nebraska because there are some great manufacturers here. But what attracted you here?
Initially I didn't really know much about Behlen. I knew what they did. I knew the products that they produced. I was not aware. I stumbled into. It's been a great, probably the best thing that's ever happened in my career, to be honest. And it's just dumb luck, I guess, that I was able to come across the position at Behlen. Now that I'm here, it is really eye-opening to see how much different it can be, especially when you get, I worked down the street for a similar manufacturing facility for nearly 20 years, and you really become numb to just how things are and accept, the way they are, as that's how it's supposed to be. And coming to Behlen, it's been an eye-opener as to, holy cannoli, man, have I been missing out?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great point. What gets you to stay then? What were you missing out on?
And John, I think, kind of touched on it when he was talking to you a little bit earlier. Here I'm Mick Yrkoski. I am a person. Where I came from, I had, everyone knew my name, but I was a number. If I left tomorrow, no one would know. No one would. I mean, they would know. My friends would know, but the company would replace me, very, very quickly. Here. At least I feel, or they make me feel like if I'm not here tomorrow, someone's going to really care and be concerned as to, hey, where's Mick? And we need Mick here, and it makes you feel good. It makes you want to come back to work. It makes you want to come to work and give 110%, because you're a part of something. So,
Cody, I've got a slightly different question for you because, this company is like part of your legacy in a lot of ways. So, how do you set things up for success in the future so you get more stories like Mick's?
Well, at the end of the day, we got to be here.
Yeah.
Right? So we got to do the things today that set us up for success tomorrow, as well as get what we got to get done today. So it is that forward look, and maybe making some decisions that aren't the most whatever. Maybe not the business decision, for the bottom line today, but we know that that's going to set us up for the future.
Yeah.
And being in a family-owned company, it allows us that flexibility to do that versus just watching that bottom line. You know what I mean? And that's the most important thing. The most important thing for us, is to make sure we're here, right? Because that takes care of all the partners in progress that we have, right? Obviously, that takes care of our customers because they depend on us to be here. And I think you're going to get to it, but Behlen is a staple in the community as well.
Yeah.
And a big employer here in Columbus. So it is making the decisions, that we want to be here in another 50 years, right?
It's not every day, and it's not common that you see somebody in Cody's position as a family member that owns a large company and have him come to a podcast with dirty knees and dirty hands.
Yeah.
It just goes to it goes a long ways for me in particular. He's not going to ask me to do something that he's not going to be willing to do himself.
Right.
And that speaks volumes to the right people.
It's a very, very good example. Let's keep diving into what it's like working here, because I think this is a Mickism, as I'm going to call it. There's another one later in the interview, but I believe when we were talking, a couple weeks ago, you had mentioned that you want people to come here. You want to attract people that don't realize they're rock stars and show them they're rock stars in manufacturing. Describe that a little bit.
So that kind of stems on just that's my personal belief, and it's based off of my career. I'm not a traditional, I didn't go to school like a traditional person right out of high school. In fact, when I graduated high school, I intended to be running my family farm. Unfortunately, that kind of fell through, and that didn't work out the way I had planned. So I had to figure out how I was going to make a living, right? So I started as an entry-level manufacturing position, worked my way through, went to school, got my education while I was working. And there were key individuals that I kind of looked to as mentors in my career that gave me an opportunity to prove myself. And so, I guess maybe it's a little bit of the pay it forward mentality. I try to do the same thing with my department, so we are very, very active in bringing in the apprenticeship program. We're very active in the internship program. I help up at the community college, try to identify the talent at that's coming into the school that I want to bring into Behlen. And then once we identify those guys, we bring them in and we tell them, hey, we believe in your potential. We believe in it so much that we'll help you get to where you want to go, and show you how to become what you want, what you're aspiring to become.
Yeah.
And that's, I made the comment, to me, a maintenance person, in my career in manufacturing, maintenance has always kind of been the rock stars of the manufacturing facility, right?
Yeah.
When something goes haywire or goes awry, maintenance is the person that gets called to come in. They're the heroes, right? The superhero that gets the machine back up and going. They come in, they get production back going, and they save the day type of mentality, right? And so it's, that's kind of where that comment derived from for me, is just, I want to be able to help people in the same way that people have helped me throughout my career.
And I feel like you're an example of a key piece of what differentiates Behlen here, in Nebraska. Cody, a slightly different question for you. Since it is a market where, there are other places people could work, for example,
absolutely.
and every manufacturer is looking for people right now. There's no manufacturer that's like, we're good, we've got everyone right now. What do you do? What are other things you do to stay competitive and attractive in this market?
Right. I mean, that's always a challenge. It doesn't matter if you're trying to fill a position in the front office, you're trying to fill a position, on the production floor, you're trying to fill a position in maintenance. I mean, there is always competition.
Yeah.
So the obviously, we want to attract top talent, and we have to be competitive, when it comes to wages, because that's obviously why do people work. Biggest pay, I mean, a major piece of that, right, is so that they can pay their bills. And so we do have, we have to be competitive, but there's other things we do and try to communicate that way is, like profit sharing. So basically, the tagline, I guess you could say, is, if the company's better off, our people should be better off. So sharing in those profits. So that's kind of that added level, to keep people here, bring people here, keep people here. And it's community involvement, like Mick said, getting out in front, being involved, being present at all the community events, and being sponsors and supporting the community, and being, and some of it is being flexible. I mean, a lot of what, we kind of we have guidelines here, and so that means that back to the number versus a person, everybody's situation is a little bit unique. So I think we do have a little more flexibility in working with people, so that they can, do the things they need to do, as well as we can get the things done here we need to do.
Yep.
So I think it's all of that, it's giving back. It's having a good work environment to come into, and it's being competitive.
Yeah. So I'm going to list a couple things I heard from both of you. Mick, you were talking about apprenticeships and internships. Cody, if I were to list off some of the things I would summarize, it's being involved in the community, it's profit sharing, that's a model that's worked well for your business, flexibility. Is there anything else? Because manufacturers are going to listen to this across the country, right?
Yep.
Any other advice you'd give them in terms of what makes a company, how do you compete in a competitive market?
Well, I'll add a little bit to what Mick said, as far as bringing in, seeing people's potential, and willing to grow them, and that's a big thing around here. Like, one of our global values, continuous learning. So we do have tuition reimbursement programs, right? We do have internal training programs set up. Welding is a great example of that. We have a partner in progress that does a great job of bringing anybody that really wants to learn how to weld, even if they've never picked up a welder before, right?
Yeah.
We dedicate a resource to trying to grow them, give them a skill set that they that is valuable to them, and obviously to work them into production and have them produce product. And that's that's an investment of us into them, and hopefully it's a risk, right? We can always train somebody and they can walk out the door, but that's a risk we're willing to take, right?
Yeah.
We're willing to take the risk. We're going to spend the time and the resources to get you try to get you where you want to go, so that you can grow your skill sets and obviously help the company.
Yeah,
So.
and I like what you just said there, because I think it's a common thing we hear in industry, where it's like, what if we invest in them and they leave? It's like, well, what if we invest in them and they
Exactly.
stick around as well? So
Right.
And a great example of that is, I left a company, it was a Fortune 200 company that's in the community, and they tried to mitigate that risk. They would put, Cody mentioned the tuition reimbursement program here. They would try to mitigate the level of risk of somebody using tuition reimbursement and then leaving the company after a couple of years. Well, there's no cap here at Behlen. Once you start, if you want to go get your college education, the mentality here is go get your education, get it as quickly as you can handle, and then bring what you've learned and come back and help us be better.
Yeah.
And that's a great it works very well, and it's back to what I said earlier, it speaks volumes to the right people, and it helps bring the right people. The people that are going to take advantage of that and stick around are the ones that you want to have in your companies, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, one thing I noticed when I walked in the door here this morning at Behlen was just the vibe. Like, you sensed pride, you sensed people were excited to work, excited to innovate, make a difference. And I actually had the opportunity to sit in on one of the morning meetings out on the plant floor. And one of the things I noticed was just the proactive approach and the empowerment that was present in that meeting. I mean, the first topic was around safety, right? And it wasn't about, hey, these are safety issues. It was about what can we do to continue to be proactive so that way things don't turn into safety issues. And there was a conversation around scrap, talking about, hey, this is what scrap is costing us. So it really felt like everyone in that discussion had a sense of ownership. There were measurable aspects. Everyone wanted to make sure everyone was working for the good of the company there. Mick, I'll start with you on this question, because I think manufacturing folks can learn a lot from this. How do you create a meeting or a culture like that where people feel that sense of ownership and empowerment?
Well, I don't know if you noticed, but when in that meeting, it's structured. It's a structured setup, but it's an open conversation. People come to that meeting with ideas. That's the expectation, is that we hash out these problems at that level of this company, and before they become something bigger, and they have to be hashed out above us, and we get force-fed a solution, right? Very seldom when we talk about something at that particular meeting that you were at, I've yet to experience a time where we were not able to hash out a solution at that level of this company to get a problem taken care of and get it, to where it didn't become a bigger issue, I guess,
And that's like a 3-tiered meeting, right? That was the leadership, but then they bring that back to their teams, and then back to their teams.
Up and down.
That.
Up and down.
It goes up and down. So, the other part of this is, both of those, so safety and quality, both of those very significantly impact our profit sharing program. And, profit sharing, people think, oh, it's a bonus program. It might be $500 or $1,000 type of a bonus thing, which is a very good bonus at a lot of companies. That's here at Behlen, our profit sharing program is a month. It could be it was over a month of pay a couple of years ago. We got paid 13 months in a 12-month period. That is a very that is a very substantial amount of money for a lot of people. And a lot of people take, back to your point, they take a lot of pride in that. And so getting those detractors, I guess, from profit sharing, getting those identified and squashed and taken care of, the sooner we get that done, the better, right? And it helps everybody. And so to me, that's kind of a big driver in how those meetings are structured and how those meetings evolved into what they have evolved into, I guess. If that makes.
And I think, it starts with kind of the culture that was instilled here, right? When TR bought the company in '84. And the programs that we've tried to put in place. I mean, one of his big things was we don't want our partners in progress, our people, to leave their brains at the door. Right? They're the ones doing it every day. There's no one that knows that process better than the person that is doing it every day.
That's right.
And we want those ideas, to have an avenue and a channel to get investigated, to get implemented, and that's kind of where what we call our AIM program comes in. And I don't know if you guys have talked about that yet, but awareness is money is what that stands for, and it's basically to incentivize. I mean, we have kind of rewards and things that go along with it, but the moral of the story is we want a structured channel so that anybody, it doesn't matter what position, where they're at, can submit ideas. We have a full-time team that's investigating and implementing those ideas, whether it's building something or it could be purchasing something, but whatever it might be, to investigate that and get it implemented so that we can obviously reduce safety's number one. I mean, if there's any sort of safety concerns, that's a priority. But also, how maybe there's any ideas to reduce scrap.
Yeah.
Right. That ties into those key items that we're talking about in our meetings, as well as just making something easier, making it quicker. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that goal, and I think as far as that culture goes, that's a big piece of it, and just reiterating that we want everybody's opinions, right?
Yeah.
We want everybody's ideas and thoughts, because it may be a case where somebody in a leadership role, nothing against them, but maybe they didn't think about it that way, right? And we got to have that from a leadership perspective. We've got to have that openness, right?
Yeah.
And work with our partners in progress and work together to make things better.
Yeah. I'm hearing openness to everyone's perspective, regardless of level in the company.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Cody, what I like about you said, don't leave your brains at the door.
Mm-hmm.
I also like how you connected that to AIM, which is awareness is money,
Yep.
right? Because we want your opinions, we want your perspectives, because if you do that and you're here and you're a critical thinker, when you're out there on the floor, that means you have the potential to impact profits as well.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody does.
Absolutely.
Everybody does.
And I should say not just profits, safety, quality,
Yep.
all of the above, everything that goes is
Yep.
associated with that.
Yep.
So, no, I appreciate everything you've taken us through. My last couple questions are around like the community, because funny enough, this is my second time in Columbus, Nebraska. I don't live here or anywhere near here, but I've returned to Columbus, Nebraska, which I'm sure not many people have done that before. It's not the most common thing in the world.
They
but-
usually mistake it for Columbus, Ohio.
Well, it was funny because I was here at an event that the Industrial Solutions Network and Renson House were throwing at the community college. That's where I've actually met some of your team before.
Gotcha.
Over there. But let's talk about the community a little bit, because Mick, I think you're doing some really tangible things out there, because you're teaching at a class at one of the colleges. Where is that?
So they, about 5 years ago at Central Community College here in Columbus, they reached out. They were looking for adjunct instructors to help. They had been approved for a grant for the mechatronics program that they do. Mechatronics is just it's a fancy word for electromechanical technician type degree program. That's a 2-year degree program that they offer up there. The recruiter was out doing her thing, and she had filled the classroom and created a wait list that required them to offer another class. And then she continued and had a wait list that to where they would not only offer the some classes in the fall, they would also offer them again in the spring. So they were reaching out. I had recently completed my mechatronics degree. I also had completed my bachelor's degree, and so they were looking for an instructor, and it's been every year in the fall I go up there and I teach fluid power systems, a couple of fluid power systems classes that they offer, and that's my thing, I guess.
How has that been helpful to Behlen, if you had to take a guess?
Well, so one of the things, with being in charge of maintenance out here, it allows me to see what's coming through the pipeline.
Yeah,
and
very true.
And, promote the heck out of our internship program.
Yeah.
And kind of cherry pick the top talent that's coming through the program.
Oh yeah, you're like, this person got an A, they got an A. Hey, how about you come work
and
at Behlen when
it
this is done?
doesn't even necessarily have to be the grade that they received. It could be, hey, this guy comes
Great
to
point.
class.
I love it.
He works his tail off. He may not know everything right out of the gate, but he figures it out. And I like that, if somebody comes in, I would take a technician anytime that has drive and aspires to be better over somebody that knows the answer and don't have to do the research or don't know how to do the research to find the answer. And there are some very gifted people that are extremely intelligent, and I'm not trying to take anything against those, but the ones that will eventually, the ones that have to work to get better, they will be better.
Yeah. No, it's
and it'll show up in the pride that they take in their work when they get done with something. That piece of equipment will be fixed. Back to the whole superhero thing. Maintenance is the end all be all. That's the expectation that's set. So when they walk away from that machine's ready to run, and we're not coming back to it until something else breaks on it. And if you put the right people in those positions, you can meet that expectation. So.
Yeah, you've got a frontline view
Yep.
to the next generation, the men and women that are going to come into the workforce. I've got one last question to wrap this up, and it's associated with what we're talking about. It's another Mick-ism, but Cody, you're actually going to get the chance to answer this first. So, how do we make mechatronics folks look like superheroes? You've talked about this, and I think teaching a class is a great example. But Cody, if you want to lead us up, and then Mick will wrap with you.
How do we make them?
How do we make mechatronics folks look like superheroes?
Give them the opportunity to work on something, right? Proofs in the performance. But no, we really have in the last under Mick's leadership. I mean, in the last I've been here 6 years. In the last I'd say 2 or 3, we brought some really talented electromechanical guys in that have really excelled.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we do have a wide variety of manufacturing equipment because of some of those unique things that we do produce, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can be a challenge, right? It can be a challenge, but just continuing to automate, continuing to improve the processes. I see a ton coming out of that electromechanical group. They're able to think outside that box, right?
Yeah.
And say, okay, here's what we've got. What can we do? How can we make this better? How can we make it easier for the operator? How can we get more data, right? I mean, that's the key is how can we get more data? How can we use that data to make improvements. So I think it's just getting the right person in the door and giving them that opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of a recruiting. It almost works well for the recruiting side as well. Behlen has been in this community for almost 90 years.
Almost 90 years.
We're pushing 90 years.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have 90-year-old equipment in this facility, but we've got some very old equipment in this facility. And so when I go out and do recruiting, that's it's something that I kind of spin it to where we can use that as something to draw some of that younger talent in here is, our leadership team, our C-suite, or the guys that are running this company, they understand the condition and the shape of some of the stuff that we have out here, especially the very key processes, and they are committed to bringing in new technology, bringing in new equipment, and making things better out here. The people that we're filling with the maintenance roles and the controls specialist roles and stuff like that, it's their opinions and it's their ideas that we're using to move us into that next century or the next stage of Behlen. And that's an exciting thing, especially for a young kid, I can really make an impact and I can leave my mark at Behlen, and this is how I can do it, and when they come in here and they see what we got going on and they see some of the, see the impact that some of these controls guys that he's been talking about, it's, we make it pretty easy for a guy to be a superhero.
Yeah. Well, you've given a lot of really tangible examples through this of how you're empowering your teams, and in turn that translates to how you're making this a safe environment, how you're getting folks to come here, how you're getting them to stay. I appreciate both of you taking us through all of these examples, specific stories you've shared. So thank you so much for jumping on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Cheers.
you.